Joining me now is Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida. He's a Republican member of the Judiciary Committee. Hey, Congressman, you will be interested to know that social media, you've not yet said a word, is already blowing up. Barbara, by way of illustration, is upset that I would have you on so that you could, quote unquote, lie again as you always do. And then there's Freedom. And Freedom says, like, why, Matt, are you going on this television program that promotes DNC talking points? Why, Matt? Why? Anyway, I'm glad that you're here.
I'll put Barbara down as a maybe. No, I'm glad to be here, too, and I'm also glad that you provide a platform for some, I think, academic discussion of these important issues facing the country.
All right, here's my question. You heard my commentary. What kind of a precedent would we be setting for future elections if the president's requests for foreign assistance in our elections is normalized?
Well, I have to reject the premise of the question. I think that the president's context for these discussions isn't forward-leaning into the next election. He is attempting to solicit Ukraine's support to find out what happened in the last election. It is a retrospective conversation as it relates to the Ukraine. And when you look at Zelensky praising Trump for creating a populist rhetoric that was helpful to him and rooting out corruption, I think you see two men who are on the same page, frankly trying to leverage against Europe to get Europe to do more for the Ukraine.
Well, you say that, but you look at those text messages. I mean, we were leveraging, our diplomats and Rudy Giuliani were leveraging a meeting with the president, leveraging these monies, leveraging, going so far as to write a statement for him. It seems like we were force-feeding him to do what the president wanted to do relative to the Bidens, or he wasn't going to get what he was looking for, including the aid.
Let's just remember, when evaluating this aid, that President Obama withheld the aid indefinitely. So this notion that, like, to withhold the aid is a uniquely impeachable offense, I think would be counter to the experience we had under the prior president. I also think that when you look at those text messages you just referenced, there's additional context. Ambassador Sondland, who's going to be testifying before some members of the House in the coming days, provided analysis that this wasn't a quid pro quo, that distinctly the president wasn't interested in a this for that arrangement regarding this military aid. And I think that directly answers back the Taylor text message where, remember, Taylor was citing a Politico article. And there is a tactic here that we saw in the Russia investigation. You saw Fusion GPS leak stories to Yahoo News, and then you saw them go back and cite those stories through the government cited those stories when trying to validate the Fusion GPS work product. So here you have Mr. Taylor, who is citing a Politico story that may very well have been leaked by the people trying to make this look like a quid pro quo, when there are very legitimate reasons to withhold the aid. And if you don't think there are legitimate reasons, then your issue is with President Obama, not with President Trump.
Well, but President Obama never said, I'm going to withhold aid unless you take a look at Mitt Romney. I mean, I think that the president's
Neither did President Trump, though, Michael. I mean, where did President Trump say that?
But President Trump, through the texts, through the whistleblower complaint, which I think the complainant didn't even have benefit of listening to the phone call or see the memo that recast it. But I guess, Matt, Congressman,
you just said the whistleblower complaint was irrelevant. You said that in your opening.
But it's irrelevant because so much corroboration has now been put forth. Let me ask the question this way. If the president, I'll qualify it as a question, if the president were leveraging American tax dollars for the benefit of first getting dirt on a political opponent, you'd agree that would be crossing a line, right?
Yeah, if a president engaged in a quid pro quo where they said, you have to give me dirt on your opponent or I'm not going to give you aid, that would be an abuse of power. That would not be acceptable conduct. So you don't think that happened here? But I think the Russia, no, clearly it didn't happen here. What you have is the president and Attorney General Barr working around the world to try to figure out why there was a corrupt Russia investigation that tore our country apart for 2 years that didn't result in any evidence of a criminal conspiracy. This is an open and obvious thing that Bill Barr even said he was going to do during his confirmation hearings, so it shouldn't surprise people.
If there were, I mean, the president's defense is to say, hey, I'm all about ridding the world of corruption. If there were one other instance where the president had withheld or threatened to withhold funding because he first wanted a crackdown on corruption, I think his hand would be strengthened. But I'm unaware of another instance.
Yeah, check out
Go
the
ahead.
Northern Triangle. Check out Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. There is aid that the president has sort of put in jeopardy there because he wanted to see those governments stop acting in common cause with human traffickers and instead to enhance their border security and their national presence and being a good partner with us. So this is actually a pretty frequent tool the president uses to say, hey, look, America is not going to be the patsy for the world if you don't clean up your act. And especially in Eastern Europe. I've had meetings with leaders in Eastern Europe, and it's all about U.S. officials trying to explain that if they do not fix corruption issues, that there will not be foreign investment. And then we look like hypocrites when Hunter Biden is making 50 G's a month for reasons that I don't really understand. But like, Michael, do you believe that Hunter Biden would have been making $50,000 a month from a foreign energy company if his dad weren't vice president?
Listen, I believe that Hunter Biden probably put his father in a very awkward position in terms of appearances, but that's not a justification for the leveraging of American tax dollars and saying to someone who desperately needs our aid, a foreign leader, you're not getting it unless this investigation takes place. I have a political question for you.
Zelensky said the investigation is going to take place, but there's an important point in the transcript that I think refutes your comment. In the transcript, Zelensky says it's already my plan to look into this. It's already my plan to look into this company with Hunter Biden. He says that to Trump, not as a consequence of any prodding or pressure, but because that's what Zelensky ran on. He ran as an anti-corruption populist, and even told President Trump he used some of the pages out of President Trump's political book to drain the swamp in the Ukraine.
I've read all the texts. The texts make it very clear that we weren't even going to give the guy a meeting unless he was first prepared to investigate the Bidens. I have a political question for you,
That's why Ambassador Volker's testimony is going to be so important to get out, because when you read the Volker transcript, you'll see that Volker's saying that what someone says in his text, that there's no quid pro quo, is what everybody believed who was on the team.
Yeah, but
Taylor was
look
the
at that.
outlier,
But look at the
citing a
text.
Politico article.
Okay, but look at the text. Why is there any reason? Why is there any Why is there any justification to take it offline? If you show the next screen, Catherine, put that back up and show the next screen where the guy says, hey, essentially, let's take it offline now and not continue with this dialogue back and forth. What's to be hidden? Why go offline unless you've got something that you don't want in the public domain? I need to get to my political question.
Some conversations are more productive when you have them over the phone or in person rather than over text, because you're able to get that.
Yeah, I don't know that it was a productivity. Okay, here's the political question. Be the first.
You know, no, it wasn't.
Be the first to answer my survey question of the day. Put it up on the screen for Congressman Gaetz. This is what I want to know. The president's defense. Is his main objective in the way that he's defending himself to provide a defense, or is he really seeking to finish off Joe Biden because he wants to run against Elizabeth Warren? Which of the two is it?
Yeah, I think it's the former, not the latter. I've talked with the president about which adversary would be, the one that he would rather face. And in a lot of circumstances, you look at Joe Biden failing to remember things, failing to energize crowds. I feel like sometimes you got to give smelling salts to a Joe Biden crowd just to wake him up a little bit. I think he sees Biden actually as the weaker adversary. So I don't think this is about playing in the Democrat primary politics. I think this is about a defense that shows there was no pressure, there was no quid pro quo. Zelensky says that, and we believe the context, the text messages, the Volker transcript, and the testimony of Ambassador Sondland coming up will all bear that out.
Okay, I'm going to let Barbara and Freedom know that they can turn their televisions back on because the segment is coming to a conclusion. Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks for having me, Michael.